What's the number one thing that your pet needs to survive? Have you thought about it? It's actually pretty simple. And I'm here to tell you that we need to actually be looking deeper into what it is, what we're giving them, and how we can improve it. Because it seems pretty harmless, and we're all drinking it every single day. Our dogs, our cats, us as humans, and it seems pretty benign, but it's pretty essential to life. What is it? It's water. We're talking about water today. Seems super simple. Like we don't even think about it when we pick up that glass, when we fill up our pet's water bowl. But there's things that are lurking in your pet's water, in your water, that you need to know about. And we're going to talk about some great resources and some scary things that you might find out too, where you go through and you look at what is in my water and then you can improve it. That's what we're all about. I'm Dr. Katie Woodley, the natural pet doctor, and this is our weekly coffee talk with the doc. I'm a holistic veterinarian in the Northern Colorado region, and my mission is to empower you as the amazing pet parents that you are with the knowledge and the education to help your pets live a long and vibrant life. Today seems pretty like, okay, Katie, like water, really? You know what though? Let's talk about why it's so important. And the thing is that our pets' bodies are actually made up of 70 to 80% of water. It's essential for every single function of the body. So it's going to help regulate body temperature. It keeps our tissues elastic, the skin elastic. It lubricates the joints. It helps the entire digestive process, and it helps transport nutrients to the cells. It keeps the nose, the eyes, the mouth, the lungs moist, keeps them functioning well. And here's the other huge part that we tend to forget about, we take it for granted, is it filters out waste products. It helps filter out the toxins. When you're dehydrated, don't you feel worse? I know I do. And it's the same with our pets. And so we have to look at our dogs and our cats. What are their physical requirements? What are their needs? And how can we better make sure that we're hitting those requirements and those needs so that we're helping to optimize health? Because here's a fact, most cats, especially if they're on a kibble diet, a dry food diet, are chronically dehydrated. This is why we see more kidney issues. It contributes. It's not necessarily a known cause. However, when we think about it, if they're dehydrated all the time because we're feeding them a super dry food that only has 10% moisture content, how are they supposed to filter out those toxins? How are we supposed to help optimize their organ function? We can't. So let's touch briefly on how much water should your dog drink to stay healthy? How much water should your cat drink to stay healthy? And there's some easy things that you can look at to ensure that your pets are getting enough water throughout the day. So your dogs typically are going to be about an ounce of water per pound of body weight. So if you have a 10-pound dog, you want to make sure they're getting 10 ounces per day. So about a cup. If you have a bigger dog, 100-pound dog, super easy, right? 100 ounces. So if you're feeding a dry food diet, making sure they're going through that. You can measure that in their water bowl at the beginning of each day. So we're using fresh water. That's going to help. With our cats, they tend to drink a little bit less. However, if they're drinking an ounce per pound and that's their normal, it hasn't changed, that's okay. And so typically, though, they're going to consume anywhere between 5 to 10 ounces of water per day. This will vary if your pet is on a higher moisture food. So I notice that a lot of my clients are like, my cat's not drinking anymore when we transition them over from a dry food diet over to a wet food diet or a raw food diet. And it's because the moisture content of those foods are a lot higher than the kibble diet that's only 10%. So a lot of times you see that drinking level go down. Now, here's where I have my kitten Moki that I talk about all the time. He's not truly a kitten anymore. He's actually a young adult, but he still acts like a kitten. He's crazy. And he has cerebellar hypoplasia. And when we adopted him, I knew that I didn't want him to be on a kibble diet. I wanted to start him off with canned food, and we had to transition slowly. He had a lot of GI issues. He had a lot of antibiotic usage in his early stages of life, for like coccidia, and he had upper respiratory infections. So they gave him antibiotics for that. Like his GI tract was trashed. So I had to go slowly, transitioning him over and using supplements. And the thing is this cat, like if you've seen Moki, if you've seen his videos with cerebellar hypoplasia, it affects the cerebellum. So they can't, like they don't walk normal. The cerebellum is like the coordination center. So he like marches, he high steps in his head, like he gets intention tremors. So anytime he focuses on something, he's sitting there like this, like we call him our yes man because of that. He's just like bobbling his head, and it doesn't cause any pain. So don't worry, he's not in pain. However, he doesn't drink. I've never seen this cat drink water. So what I do, because I know he has a health condition that limits his ability to do things, is I make sure I put water into his food. So he's on a raw food diet now. It's higher in moisture, but I always add water to that to ensure that he's staying hydrated because I know he's not drinking enough. So you can start measuring out based on your pet's body weight. If you have a 10-pound cat, 5 to 10 ounces per day. If you have a dog, they use the ounce per pound, and you can measure. So if you're worried about them, add in water into their food too. You can always make it a bit of a slurry. You're suddenly noticing water intake changes where they're drinking a ton of water, and that's a new thing for them. They're actively seeking out water. Make sure you get them checked out by the vet. That's very, very important. So let's go on. What is the best water to give them, right? Who here is using a filter or is using tap water? Maybe you're using bottled water. Are you distilling water? There's a lot of different things out there, and it gets really confusing. Now, here's the thing. Let's go with unfiltered tap water first. You would think it would be clean, right? And it is clean from like bacteria and other toxins. Well, bacterial toxins. Let me rephrase that. We've done a great job with that. So that's where your chlorine that's added into our tap water. So at the municipal plants, they're adding in these treatment chemicals to make sure that we're not getting sick from like bacterial overgrowth. And they do a good job with that. So we are very lucky in the United States. We have clean, technically clean drinking water. But here's the problem. According to the Environmental Working Group, there's actually 316 toxins that are lurking in the tap water throughout the country. And so this will vary between countries. So I'm going to be referring to the United States, and some of the resources I'm going to give to you are for the state. So keep that in mind, because I know there'll be different like environmental working groups, similar companies that you can go to and look. So if you're seeing something and you want to look it up, just look up your country and find out what resources you can tap into to test your drinking water, to look into what chemicals might be in your area code, your zip code. That's really important, because the thing is that these chemicals that are used, what happens is they react with the things they're breaking down, and they form byproducts. So this is where we tend to see chloramine, we tend to see other toxins. And so you can go to the Environmental Working Group, so ewg.org/tap water, and you can type in your zip code. And here's a scary thing. I did it last night. And I did it a while ago, just to see when I was talking about detoxing. And the scary thing is the Environmental Working Group, so they have limits. So we have a Safe Drinking Water Act to help protect us. That's really important. And so they've created legal limits. So if we pass over that, that's a problem. That's where you hear like, oh, you need to be boiling your drinking water. Great, that's awesome. Or, there's too much lead in the water, we get neurological issues, just like what happened in Flint, Michigan. And the thing is that those chemicals pass through and they're in our tap water. So if we're not filtering those out, if we are not aware that they're present, we are putting that into our body. And here's the thing, they are known carcinogens. They have been shown to lead to cancer down the road. So when I did this for our area code, for our zip code, there were actually over 14 things that were actually past the EWG requirements, but they were still under the legal limit. So those legal limits are crap. They don't mean much. It's to like protect you from the Flint, Michigan thing, right? Potentially. And so that's where, you know, we get above that and people can die. They can get really, really sick right away. But we don't know the long-term effects of these products. And so when I looked at that, I was like, shoot, I've had 2 cats and a dog develop cancer. And you have to start looking at what is in the environment. This is one of the pillars of optimal health, is what's in the environment that we are putting into our pets' bodies, not knowingly. And we need to do the things to limit that. Here's the other thing. So not only do we have the byproducts from the chemicals that are treating the water, we have the wonderful glyphosate, so Roundup. So glyphosate is actually extremely soluble in water. And this is covered under the Safe Drinking Water Act also. And the maximum level that they've actually allow in drinking water by federal law is 700 parts per billion. The thing with glyphosate is that we know this is a carcinogen. It is water soluble. It's in 80% of our rainwater. So what happens? We spray it on our yards, we spray it on our crops, where it sinks into the soil and it can enter the tap water, it can enter the groundwater. So even if you have a well, you're tapping into water not from like a community, you have your own private source, this can still be affecting you. And it is a known carcinogen. And so the problem with all these chemicals, we have fluoride, we have chloramine, we have glyphosate, plus numerous others, is that they're all building up. And you also have your house and water system you're connected to. If you're living in a home built before 1986, they often have lead problems due to pipes. So it's really important to be testing the water to see what's in it. And the other thing is too, who here has a pet with urinary issues? Bladder stones that recur, urinary crystals, big problem, especially in cats and dogs. I see it almost every single week that there's a urinary problem with bladder stones, bladder crystals. You have to pay attention to the water hardness, the amount of minerals that are present. And this is where you can use water softeners. You have to be careful because the salt content, so if you have the sodium content that you're using to soften the water, can affect your cats, can affect your dogs. If they have kidney disease or heart disease, we don't want a lot of sodium going into them. But there's numerous studies. So a study actually done in 2015 by Wrigley and other EPA scientists actually showed that increased bromide concentrations. So this is one of those toxic byproducts from cleaning our water, produced a significant increase in bladder cancer risk. I can tell you right now that the amount of bladder cancer in our pets is significantly increasing. So when I look at this and I see, okay, studies are showing that these byproducts in the water are increasing bladder cancer, there's known correlation with bladder cancer risk and living near golf courses where we know there's a lot of herbicides and pesticides used on those grasses. Glyphosate has a link too. And we've also showed studies where there's an increased amount of glyphosate in pets' urine when they're fed kibble diets. So when you start adding up all these areas where there's chemicals that are going into your pet's body, it adds up. And so we need to start thinking about it. We need to start looking at, okay, maybe our tap water isn't the most safe. Same for us, right? We're seeing autoimmune disease, cancer rates rise. We're seeing, here's the other thing with tap water. There's things in it that you don't want in you. So what I mean by that is birth control. We're seeing so much hormone disruptors that are present in the water that the cleaning process does not remove. So if you're on birth control, like I'm not against birth control, but what happens is every time you go to the bathroom, it's going into the water supply. They're cleaning that water and they're making it safe to re-drink, but those hormones are still present. And we're seeing that in the wildlife. We're seeing increased feminization of amphibians and frogs, and it's causing major environmental issues. So those are also going into us. If we get too much estrogen, too much hormones, it dysregulates our endocrine system, and it can lead to things like cancer and other chronic diseases. And the other things too is think about what I found fascinating is there's studies that show recreational drugs increase during certain days of the week in the water supply. So think about it, Thursday through like Sunday, when people are off work and they're doing what they do to relax or whatever it is, there's no judgment here, but it's going into our water supply. So if you are drinking unfiltered tap water, or you're giving that to your pet, I would highly reconsider how you're giving that. And don't worry, I'm going to give you some tips. Now, you would think bottled water would be more beneficial, right? Well, there's less regulations with bottled water. And so they've actually had more issues with contamination, bacterial contamination, because of the less regulations. And a lot of times those companies are putting tap water into the bottles, and it's the same thing. But now we also have plastic problems. So what's in plastic? Your phthalates. It's a known endocrine disruptor. This is the problem with like the can linings in like cat food that were known to lead to an increased risk of hyperthyroidism. And so now we've got like plastic leaching into the water. So don't use plastic water bottles, because then what happens too? We throw them out and they get recycled, hopefully. And we're having a huge plastic issue. It's going into the oceans. Our wildlife is ingesting it. It's leading to all sorts of problems. So there's no, like, I would not prefer bottled water over tap water. I would use filtered tap water or distilled water. So distilled water, let's talk about some of the different options for water that are out there. So your distilled water is where you boil the water and you essentially condense the steam, you capture the steam that's boiled off. So you're getting rid of like the chemicals and the toxins because you're boiling it at a high enough temperature to get rid of them. And, you know, the thing is that when we do that, it will help. So distilled water is not a bad thing. There's comments about there's not enough vitamins and minerals. We're removing that. It's going to leach it from the body. And here's the thing. If you are feeding an optimal diet and you're adding in vegetables and fruit and you're creating variety for your dogs and your cats and you're feeding species appropriate food, there's less risk of that happening. And so the benefits you get from distilling reverse osmosis, filtering the water versus giving tap water filled with all sorts of toxins and chemicals and hormones, it's worth it. It is really, really worth it, because 60% of pets will develop cancer. Been there, all 3 of my pets had cancer. And the amount of chemicals, I know, because I checked the EWG website and looked up my zip code and saw that we are above the nationwide average on some of these byproducts in our drinking water. And I am not going to, we filter our water. We use a Berkey filter and I love it. And we've used it for years. We got it down when we moved to Colorado Springs, like it's been 7-8 years. But I can tell you, I didn't always give my pets that filtered water. And I kick myself now because it all combines together. And over time, it can lead to those cancerous changes in the body. And I guarantee you, especially with Finn developing a brain tumor, my cats both having aggressive GI lymphoma, that it played a part. And we did filtered water for Finn, but it was too late. And I regret that, but now I know better. So our cats get filtered water, and I will never give them unfiltered tap water ever again after finding out what's actually in it. It's one of those things, like sometimes it takes a big thing to happen to us, and it's so hard going through cancer. I know people who've had a pet with cancer can totally relate, but cancer sucks. And if we can do these things, which when it becomes habit, like every night we fill up the Berkey and we fill it up as we go and it sits on the countertop. It's not super pretty and I don't care. Like it is worth my health to filter the water. So some of the other filtering options that you'll see out there that will help. You can do complete like in-home renovations. I put there's a Berkey filter for your shower too. So there's less chemicals going on me when I shower. Really important. It all plays a part. Of course, you know, if you have a pet, you can put a filter on your one of those Berkey filters on your shower, and you can use water from there to bathe your pets. So that's decreasing their toxins. But you have activated carbon filters. You can use reverse osmosis. That's going to go one step above those activated carbon filters because it's going to be able to remove contaminants that those carbon filters by themselves can't. With our Berkey water filter, we have to add in additional filters for the fluoride. Fluoride is also a known thyroid disruptor. So if you have a dog with endocrine disease, or you're worried about it, or you have like Hashimoto's is so common in humans, make sure you're filtering out that fluoride. I promise you your teeth will be okay and your health will improve. And you know, using your Berkey water filter, it's interesting. They've actually done studies with these Berkey water filters, and they took like pond water, like gross pond water you'd never drink, and they filtered it through this Berkey filter. And like there's a top chamber where you dump the water in, and then it filters down below, and it goes through the filters that you screw into it. And the top part was like super gross and like sewagey looking and nasty. And then the water coming out was clean, and they tested it and it removed everything. So they were able to drink water from a pond. How incredible is that? You can take dirty drinking water and turn it into clean drinking water. It's very, very powerful. Some people will use Brita filters. There's a time and place for those. So I always recommend when you're looking at a filter, whether it's to put in the fridge or to have on the counter or for an in-home system, make sure you do your research to see what exactly is it filtering out. Is it covering those chloramines? Is it covering fluoride? Is it covering all these other crazy names that I can't even pronunciate when you look up the EWG website and you do your search on your zip code to find out what's in your drinking water? But do your research and ask them, what exactly does this cover? And go deep. Make sure like they're being honest and true about that. So big thing, make sure you're filtering your water at some point. How do we encourage our pets to drink more water? So once we get the water cleaner, we have less chemicals. If you have a dog or a cat, you're worried that they're not drinking enough. The thing is what you'd want to make sure you're looking at, okay, for your cats, we have a water fountain, and most animals don't like drinking stagnant water, like where it's just sitting there in a bowl. So you can encourage them by getting a water filter or water fountain, and it'll keep kind of spewing out. It's refreshing it. Now, here's the thing with these water fountains, don't use plastic. Don't get a plastic water fountain. If it's the outside is plastic, but the inside is like a stainless steel or ceramic, that is fine. But you don't want those chemicals leaching into the water. That's really, really important. So get one of those. There's a lot on the markets. I think ours is pet safe. There's like a Drinkwell 360. Do your research, but stay away from the plastic ones. That's really important. You can serve your water at room temperature versus it being really cold. That's important too, especially with cats. Cats are finicky. They can be really, really picky. And the temperature water, the size of the bowl is really important too, especially for cats. They don't like their whiskers being touched. So make sure your bowl is wide enough where if they put their head down, their whiskers aren't touching the sides of the bowl, or it'll put them off of drinking that water. Make sure you're refreshing it. Super simple. Dump it out. Refill it each day. Fresh water. I know I don't like stagnant water that's sitting in a glass. I feel like it smells like dog's breath. It's weird. I don't know if anyone else agrees with that. Like my husband thinks I'm crazy. Like I'll like smell the water. I'm like, does this smell like dog's breath? Like, what is this? I don't know. I get that at restaurants too. So unfiltered water at restaurants, next time, smell it and see what it smells like, because it's crazy. It tastes different too. If we go back east, I'm in Colorado. We're very blessed to have cleaner water. Go back east to things like New York to visit relatives, or we go back to Michigan to visit grandparents, and the water is gross. Like it is so nasty. And that's where having like portable water filters can be really helpful, because I know it's not as clean as this water. And you can go on ewg.org website and look it up. And actually, I probably will do that, because I am not going to lie, I drink sometimes that tap water and I wonder what it's doing to my health long term when I go and visit. Of course, those are only short periods of time. So I don't want to freak everyone out and say, like, you should never drink tap water again. It will kill you, because remember, it's the long-term game we're in. We're doing something every single day and we're exposing our bodies to a toxin every single day. That will add up. It's just like the food controversy. If you're feeding processed food every single day, there's glyphosates in it, there's heterocyclic amines, there's advanced glycation end products, all from the way that pet food, that kibble is processed. Your pet's not going to die unless there's a really bad overdose of like something like vitamin D, but it takes time for it to build up. And that's why it's so hard, I think, for this mind shift and this transformation, this movement that we're going through, where pet parents are realizing that real food does matter and feeding less processed food is the way to go. And we're stuck in this way old conventional mindset that no, they need to be fed this balanced processed food diet every single day of their life. And that's not the way forward. And that's why we're seeing more disease. And we live in an everly increasing toxic world where we're seeing now toxins, those byproducts in our water. And so you combine that with the food, you combine it with the water, and we have a big problem. So the other way to get pets to drink more is add flavors. Use your bone broths. Make some bone broth from a raw, organic, meaty knuckle bone, and making sure it's organic, because once again, we know our meat supply, if we're using grain-fed, antibiotic, hormone pumped up meat, that will be in those bones, that will be in the marrow. You don't want that in your bone broth. So make sure you're using organic bones when you're making bone broth, add that in. You can offer your dog ice cubes. A lot of dogs eat ice cubes. I know there was some weird like myth going around. I don't know if it's still around, but I saw it where like if you feed your dogs ice cubes, they're going to die. It makes their stomach flip or do something stupid. And I was like, that's not real. You can give your dogs ice cubes. I promise they'll be okay. So those are a couple of things that you can do to help them and help support them. If you found this video helpful, click the like button and hit the button to subscribe so you never miss out on our future content that gets released every single week. As always, I love hearing from amazing pet parents like you. So if you have other pet health topics you'd like to hear about, make sure to leave a comment down below. And remember, you have the power to help your pet live a long and vibrant life. Together, we can make the change that's needed to help your fur family thrive naturally. Until next time, I'm Dr. Katie. Take care, pet parents.